I beg your pardon?
Rick and Morty has been what I can only describe as very odd this season. Although it's always been a very weird show, and all the better because of it, things have stuck out like a sore thumb compared to the other seasons. Whereas the adventures our duo embarks on remains as insane and mind-blowing, or numbing, as ever, the conflicts of these episodes seem to typically feature three things, sometimes all three in the same episode. These things are Rick and Morty butting heads, Rick and Morty being separated, off on their own journeys, and their tango against the forces of meta commentary. What do we mean by this? Let me explain. Now, because these occurrences have been popping up so much, they're definitely not coincidences. What they are is this season's angle of storytelling. The first two seasons of Rick and Morty were standard Adult Swim television in terms of being episodic in nature, with a little bit of continuity sprinkled in. We had characters and worlds established within what's now regarded as the classic Rick and Morty adventures. Season 3, however, tried to take a stab at serialization with a consistent story that they carried through every episode. Unfortunately, they just chose the least appealing angle, Beth and Jerry's divorce, not to mention that it had an underwhelming finale. There was a lot of issues. Now, not to tick anyone off here, but I kinda noticed that, just like all the Rick and Morty fans who wanted the show to be a non-stop sci-fi action thriller that cracks jokes while Rick and Morty are saving the multiverse, who thinks the show should be what they want it to be, there's been an equal amount of people on the other side, who thinks the show should never be like that, but instead amped up to such a degree where they're more or less also trying to behold an iron grip on the show's storytelling, which has made the fun world of theorizing kind of cutthroat in season 4. I mean, we all saw the story train episode. However, to say Rick and Morty has no kind of overall story in this current season is neglecting that each episode has running themes, specifically the three aforementioned plot points. And when it's been this prevalent for over half of the season, which is not even over yet at the time of recording, you can guess that maybe, just maybe, these elements keep popping up for a reason. The crew did learn from the reception of season 3 and likely didn't want to repeat themselves for another 10 episodes or fall victim to becoming completely episodic, because both outcomes probably sound boring for the team. If any show wants to challenge themselves from a writing standpoint and have every season offer something new, it would be Rick and Morty. So let's just run through the instances of the recurring themes and patterns of season 4 so far. Edge of Morty, Rick Die Rick Pete features Morty's manslaughter of Rick after Morty became obsessed with the death crystals, and specifically a vision of him dying old with Jessica. From this point, Rick and Morty are separated, Rick going through a series of clones in another dimension trying to find his way back, while Morty goes to the absolute extremes to achieve the timeline and girl he's pining for. The entire time, a holographic projection of Rick follows Morty, trying to convince him to revive Rick. And wouldn't you know, the episode ends on the same hook almost all season premieres are apparently committing to, a meta commentary that more or less emphasizes Rick and Morty forever. The Old Man in the Seat features Rick and Morty separated for a majority of the episode, although Morty does deal with Rick's assistant Gluty, but one crew over the crew's Morty? God, this is like the worst name ever. I don't even know if I said that right. I don't even know how I could. Much like in Vindicators 3, Return of World Ender, Rick goes above and beyond to disillusion Morty from an interest that doesn't align with what Rick wants for Morty, doing the most to make sure Morty loses his drive and passion for the heist genre. Claw and Hoarder had Rick at odds just a bit with Morty in Summer before turning into the weird, horny, sex-crazed angle, but the angle ultimately did separate Rick and Morty once more, despite how weird it was. Rattlestar Galactica ultimately was one big literal punchline. Morty didn't stay in the ship, got bitten by a snake, but that wasn't a good enough punishment in Rick's eyes, who ensures Morty learns his lesson with a straight-up deck in the face. Okay, that's just cruel, dude. That's your grandson. I mean, it's not like you haven't done worse, but standards, man. Never Rick and Morty and Primordius don't pit Rick and Morty against each other or separate them, but they do reinforce the metaphysical philosophy the show's trying to embrace in a very blunt fashion. Never Rick and Morty especially, and that episode happens to feature a fake out from not just the remnants of the Galactic Federation, but evil Morty as well. Now, we already broke down in a separate video exactly why you shouldn't look at this scene as throwing away any big plot points fans are clamoring for, and how more so, it won't be as Hollywood blockbuster as a lot of fans were likely imagining, us included. Primordius also includes a heart-to-heart between Rick and Morty, although it's juxtaposed with the fact that they're unleashing the apocalypse onto an alien civilization. This brings us to the most recent episode at the time of this recording, the Vat of Acid episode, one that really buckles down on the Rick versus Morty angle of the season. Honestly, that would be a great title for this season, Rick versus Morty. Sundays at 11. So that just rolls off the tongue perfectly. Mwah. The Vat of Acid episode has Morty completely derail Rick's plan, then go on to dunk on the plan for being poorly thought out. The two engage in a screaming match where Morty calls out Rick for not knowing how to create Morty's save point device pitch. Rick ends up creating the device, albeit not in a way that Morty pitched, so there's still a chance Morty's right, and the device ends up being, in Rick's own words, the Prestige. Morty laying waste to a countless amount of other Mortys in different probable realities, Rick then leaning into Morty merging with those realities, and then setting up Morty to face the consequences for the actions he thought didn't even happen. Actions that I'm sure people can go use to fuel the theory that Morty will become evil Morty, but I think it's all indicating something else entirely. Rick then gives Morty an out with another vat of fake acid, and more or less asserts that he will always have the higher ground over Morty. Hell, at one point Morty even calls out that his ideas are never good enough for Rick. At its core, this season is about Morty growing out of purpose in Rick's life, and arguably the universe. He no longer wants to be in Rick's shadow, the guy on the sidelines, the Robin to Rick's Batman. Morty is ready for a promotion. He wants to do more, he wants his grandfather to listen to him more and to take his ideas. Morty wants to be an equal, something that we know Rick would never let happen. But why does it feel so familiar? Well, last season had a direct parallel to the storyline with the iconic episode, The Ricklantis Mix-Up, Tales from the Citadel. We're following the events of the Rick Shank redemption and the fall of the Council of Ricks. The Citadel has been redeveloped and is in the process of electing a new president, who ends up not only being a Morty for the first time, but evil Morty. And what does evil Morty do? Immediately executes all but 2 of the Shadow Councils of Ricks, effectively wiping any control a Rick has over the Citadel and rebrands it to be a Citadel of Ricks and Mortys. It's clear evil Morty is putting Mortys as a whole on an equal playing field. He made sure the Council of Ricks and their superiors ceased to exist because as long as they had the dominant voice, Mortys would continue to function as slaves with no voice. What our Morty is going through right now is something that I think evil Morty dealt with in his past, that tons of Mortys go through. It's just all about the ambition and resources to make that change a reality. So you might be wondering, where do our Rick and Morty come into play? Truth be told, the motives of evil Morty are going to remain an enigma until we get a proper appearance from him. Because knowing the writers, it's truly unpredictable. We just know that he directly wanted Rick's memories, which let's come back to that in a moment. What we can predict with hopeful accuracy is that evil Morty, regardless of his motive, would want our Rick and Morty to submit and join his new world order because Rick's the Rickest Rick and Morty's the one true Morty. These are 2 very valuable, very powerful assets to have, especially Morty. I mean, think about it. Our Morty, being the quote one true Morty, shines most when you look at Morty's potential. Morty has become resourceful, quick thinking on his feet, much more aggressive with a stronger bloodlust, growing balls of steel, and something that his pitches to Rick really show, smarter. Look Who's Purging Now, Rick Shank Redemption, Morty's Mind Blowers, the Victorian Morty Date. These episodes all have moments that tap into Morty's true potential, a force to be reckoned with. The only thing holding him back is, of course, Rick. And if anyone would recognize that and would want to liberate Morty so he can flourish, it would definitely be evil Morty, just going off his MO thus far. Not to mention, within all of this, our Rick and Morty's actions have directly impacted evil Morty in beneficial ways. The story has been spelled out to us since Close Encounters of the Rick Kind, an episode where, again, not only did evil Morty seek after Rick's memories, stating through his evil Rick that Ricks don't care about their Mortys, but the actions of Rick and Morty led to the Morty Revolution, and the events of the Rick Shank Redemption left the door open for evil Morty to take over. Of course, evil Morty is aware of this, it benefits him the most, but because of that, it's logical to assume that he would want to become proactive in recruiting our Rick and Morty because their antics will only benefit him for so long, until a line is crossed where they're ruining things for the young tyrant. Whether it be at the end of this season or in the future, with the groundwork laid out by the previous evil Morty appearance and season 4, I believe all of this will come to a head the next time Rick and Morty stumble upon the Citadel. Rick already views himself and his grandson as above their other counterparts, but I think I'd still find the sight of Rick's and Morty's as equals, truly working together, and Morty's having a reputable title to their name, disturbing and wrong, whereas Morty would be eating it up, never wanting to leave as he's awestruck at the reconstructed society. Morty would likely find this as a place he belongs, that this should be the staple for all Ricks and Mortys, and any dark undertones wouldn't be ignored, but thrown back in Rick's face with every horrible thing he's done to others, especially Morty. Through shenanigans, they would end up having a proper face-to-face encounter with evil Morty, whom they may even recognize, and when it boils down to everything, Morty decides to give Rick the finger and join his brethren at the Citadel, becoming an ally to evil Morty, even if he still technically lives at his normal home in his not-so-home dimension. In fact, I think evil Morty would encourage that because over the process of this video, we hit an absolute brain blast. Evil Morty wanted Rick's memories for whatever reason in Close Encounters of the Rick Kind. Over the years, many fans think this has something to do with evil Morty himself, but I don't think that's the connection. I think we finally got the connection in the Vat of Acid episode, with Morty's pitches to Rick. Hear me out. I know I'm crossing into crazy theory territory here, that the 4B premiere gave naysayers ammunition to basically obliterate, but hear me out. What if the reason Rick didn't make Morty's pitch exactly the way he wanted, the reason he doesn't hear out most of Morty's pitches and always beats Morty down, is because Rick knows what Morty could do with science on his side? side. First it's pitching, then it's Morty actually being in the lab with Rick inventing, and then it's Morty taking the reins over, leaving Rick behind and maybe even taking the spot of the smartest man in the whole dimension. What if that's the track Evil Morty is on? Evil Morty is trying to figure out an invention, whether it be something tangible like a super weapon, or something that's always been clowned on by the series, like the concept of time travel. Not saying it's definitely one of those things, just throwing out examples. Maybe Evil Morty is having trouble figuring it out, but he knows the Rickest Rick has exactly what he's looking for, inside his brain, and that's where Morty comes into play. Why? Beyond his capabilities, Morty can give Evil Morty exactly what he's looking for and within the Smith residence. And you may be wondering, what could I possibly be talking about? Well, Rick's memories in tangible form. A secret chamber underneath the Smith house garage that holds erased memories of Rick and Morty, the prominent location of the episode Morty's Mind Blowers. We know Rick has his own erased memories with the vials labeled Bill C and Stanford, which served as an Easter egg to Gravity Falls. The show Rick and Morty is connected to with multiple crossover Easter eggs in both their shows and other media such as books, although this is just a harmless Easter egg that reminds us these worlds are one and the same. It's also confirmed in Gravity Falls mythos that Stanford, Pines, and Rick had a few interdimensional escapades. Now, piecing together both shows, even as an Easter egg, it only makes sense for these two vials to be Rick's memories. After the events of Close Encounters with the Rick kind, maybe even beforehand, Rick would have wanted to make sure his mind was invasion-proof. Some memories need to be locked away, and Rick's definitely smart enough to anticipate that the knowledge of some inventions need to be forgotten because, of course, he can just rediscover them naturally later when the idea pops back up as a new one. What I'm basically saying is whatever memory Evil Morty needs is in this room, and we were none the wiser. One thing that's important to mention with this is that during the scene where Rick reveals all of the different Mortys that died throughout the dimensions, one Morty is actually in the Morty's Mind Blower room. It's likely just a fun Easter egg, but much like Evil Squanchy in the season 4 premiere Death Crystals, it could also be the writers sowing the seeds for a later episode. Morty is fed up with Rick. He wants to be treated better, but there's no reason for Rick to do that, especially if beating down Morty has a twisted purpose. Evil Morty needs a particular memory from Rick, currently under lock and key in the Smith household, and could benefit from the quote one true Morty's service regardless. These two parties can mutually benefit greatly from one another, and there's nothing our Ricks can do. Of course, I doubt this would be a permanent status quo change. All this could easily be another single big episode or even a two-parter, like the Wedding Squanchers and Rick Shank Redemption, which also brought back multiple plot points, big and small, to deliver a mind-blowing story. Whatever the case may be with Evil Morty, we can't wait to see it. Again, not saying this is all planned. If we could connect the dots on the spot, of course the writers can. I don't even think they look at fan theories. And if we happen to nail it on the head, that would be amazing. But we're not expecting to. And worst case scenario, I think we came up with a pretty hype scenario that recontextualizes their adventures thus far. So basically what we're saying is do not flame us in the comments. But that doesn't mean we don't want to know what you guys think about this idea. Do you think this theory is crazy? Do you think it holds some merit? Let us know in those comments down below or tweet to us at Roundtable Vids or me at @RetroNemo.
Special thanks to JANKYBONES for creating an awesome thumbnail. For more of their amazing art, you can find them on Tumblr at JANKYBONES, Twitter and Instagram at BoneJanky, and subscribe to their YouTube channel. Link in the description.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like, share it, and subscribe to the Roundtable for more incredible cartoon content. As always guys, I'm Nemo, this is Rick and Morty Theory, and I will see you next time. Peace.